The first radar blip appeared at 3:47 hours, 47 miles northwest of Incirlik Air Base. Senior Airman Rodriguez squinted at the green phosphorescent dot, his coffee growing cold as he watched the anomaly drift across Turkish airspace. The object moved too slow for a fighter jet, too fast for commercial aircraft, and in a pattern that defied conventional flight dynamics. He reached for his headset, then hesitated. False alarms had cost careers before. Tower, we've got an unidentified contact bearing 270, altitude unknown, speed. Christ, it's accelerating. Rodriguez's voice cracked slightly as the blip suddenly lurched forward, doubling its velocity in seconds. The object was now traveling at Mach 2.3, directly toward the base's northern perimeter. In the pilot-ready room, Captain Thalia Nightshade Vasquez was reviewing her pre-flight checklist when the klaxon shrieked. Red lights bathed the concrete walls as her squadron scrambled. She had been assigned to the Dawn Patrol, a routine reconnaissance mission over the Mediterranean. Now, as pilots rushed past her toward their F-16s, she felt that familiar tightness in her chest. The same sensation from Kandahar 3 years ago when everything went wrong. "Nightshade, you're grounded," barked Colonel Morrison, his weathered face grim. "This is a code yellow scramble, real pilots only." Thalia's jaw tightened. She had logged more combat hours than half the squadron, survived a surface-to-air missile over Afghanistan, and pioneered 3 tactical maneuvers now taught at the Air Force Academy. But she was still the outsider, the former Army helicopter pilot who had clawed her way into fighters, the woman who didn't belong in their exclusive club. "Sir, I'm fully qualified for." "Negative, stand down, Captain." As Morrison strode away, Thalia noticed something the others had missed. The tactical display showed the unidentified object's trajectory, but there was a second signature, smaller, barely visible, trailing the first by approximately 12 seconds. Her blood chilled. She had seen this pattern before in classified briefings that most pilots never attended. The trailing signature wasn't debris or a technical glitch. It was a targeting system. The primary object was conducting a live-fire exercise, testing the base's response time and defensive capabilities. But testing for what? And why now, when half the squadron was deployed in Eastern Europe? Thalia grabbed her flight helmet and ran toward the tarmac. She had to warn them, had to make them understand. The incoming wasn't just unidentified, it was actively painting targets. And according to the thermal readings she'd glimpsed, its payload was nuclear. The sky above Turkey was about to become a battlefield, and they were walking into a trap. Outside, her F-16 waited in the pre-dawn darkness, its weapons systems armed and ready. Against direct orders, against protocol, against everything she had sworn to uphold, Thalia Vasquez climbed into the cockpit. Some rules were meant to be broken, especially when breaking them might save 10,000 lives. The morning sun painted the horizon blood red as she fired up the engines. Through her headset, she could hear the scrambled pilots requesting clearance for takeoff. They had no idea what they were flying into. Time was running out, and Code Bravo, the mythical last resort protocol that supposedly didn't exist, was about to become very real. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. "All units, we have visual confirmation. Single aircraft non-responsive to hails. Weapons free." Thalia's fingers hovered over the throttle. What she was about to do would either save the base or end her career. Possibly both. She pushed the throttle forward and rolled toward the runway without clearance. The tower erupted in angry chatter, but she was already committed. Her F-16 lifted off into the Turkish dawn, climbing toward an intercept course that would determine whether Code Bravo was salvation or suicide. As she banked northwest, Thalia caught a glimpse of the incoming aircraft through her HUD. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, angular, predatory, with energy signatures that shouldn't exist. The craft seemed to bend light around its edges, creating a shimmer effect that made targeting nearly impossible. Her radio crackled. Nightshade, you are ordered to return to base immediately. Acknowledge. She switched off her radio and focused on the impossible aircraft ahead. Whatever it was, whoever was piloting it, they had made one critical mistake. They had chosen to threaten her base, her people, her country, and Thalia Vasquez had never been very good at backing down from a fight. The sky stretched endlessly before her, a canvas of clouds and possibility. In the distance, she could see the other F-16s forming up, their pilots unaware that they were about to encounter technology that would redefine everything they thought they knew about aerial combat. She armed her weapons systems and prepared to enter the history books, one way or another. Her call sign had been chosen as a joke, a reference to her tendency to operate in the shadows, to find unconventional solutions to impossible problems. But as she closed the distance to the enemy aircraft, Thalia realized that sometimes the shadows were exactly where you needed to be. The hunt was about to begin. Major Alina Kastner had been monitoring the situation from the Combat Information Center when Captain Vasquez's F-16 appeared on radar without authorization. 22 years of service had taught her to recognize insubordination, but this felt different. Thalia wasn't being reckless, she was being strategic. The approach vector she had chosen was textbook perfect, a classic intercept pattern that would bring her into contact with the unidentified aircraft 12 minutes before the official scramble. "Get me a direct line to Nightshade," Kastner ordered. "Ma'am," Colonel Morrison specifically ordered. "I don't care what Morrison ordered. That pilot is about to engage an unknown hostile, and she's doing it alone." Kastner's voice carried the authority of someone who had seen too many good pilots die because of pride and protocol. "Open the channel." The radio crackled to life. "Nightshade, this is Raven Actual. What's your status?" Thalia's voice was steady, professional. "Raven, I'm tracking a single bogey, bearing 270, altitude 36,000. The aircraft is emitting some kind of jamming signal. My HUD is showing multiple ghost targets." "Negative, Nightshade. Our radar shows only one contact." "Ma'am, I'm telling you there are at least 4 distinct signatures. They're using some kind of holographic projection system. The real threat is masked among the decoys." Kastner felt her stomach drop. Holographic jamming was theoretical technology, discussed in classified briefings but never confirmed in actual use. If Thalia was right, the scrambled pilots were flying into a trap designed to overwhelm their targeting systems. "Nightshade, can you identify the primary target?" "Working on it, ma'am, but I need to get closer. The jamming is too strong for long-range identification." Through the CIC's massive display screens, Kastner watched the drama unfold. The scrambled F-16s were approaching from the east, while Thalia's lone aircraft moved in from the south. The unidentified contact maintained its northwestern heading, seemingly unaware of the converging fighters. But Kastner knew better. Whatever was piloting that aircraft was absolutely aware of the American response. The trajectory was too precise, the timing too perfect. This wasn't a random incursion, it was a carefully planned operation. "Raven, this is Falcon Lead," came the voice of Lieutenant Colonel Brooks, commanding the official scramble. "We have radar contact with the bogey, moving to intercept." "Falcon Lead, be advised you may be dealing with advanced electronic countermeasures. Recommend extreme caution." "Copy that, Raven. We're going in hot." Kastner watched as the 2 groups of aircraft converged on what appeared to be a single target. But if Thalia was right about the holographic jamming, Brooks and his pilots were about to discover that their enemy was far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. The first sign of trouble came when Falcon 3's radar locked onto empty air. "Falcon Lead, I'm showing a solid lock but no visual confirmation. Target appears to be 2 miles south of my position." "Negative, Falcon 3. Target is directly ahead of you." The confusion in the pilots' voices was palpable. Each aircraft was tracking a different contact, their instruments showing targets that didn't correlate with visual sightings. The enemy's jamming system was working perfectly, creating chaos among the American fighters. Raven, this is Nightshade. I'm going to try something unconventional. Kastner's blood chilled. Nightshade, whatever you're thinking, proceed with extreme caution. Ma'am, I'm switching to manual targeting, going to trust my eyes instead of my instruments. The audacity of the plan was staggering. Modern fighter combat relied entirely on radar and computer-assisted targeting. Flying by visual reference alone was something from the Vietnam era, a tactic that had been obsolete for decades. But as Kastner watched Thalia's F-16 bank hard to the left, she realized that sometimes the old ways were the only ways that worked. The sky above Turkey was about to witness something unprecedented. A modern air-to-air engagement fought with tactics from a bygone era, and the outcome would determine whether Code Bravo remained a myth or became a reality. Thalia's F-16 screamed through the morning sky at Mach 1.4, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the true enemy. The jamming was so intense that her HUD flickered between multiple target locks, each one claiming to be the primary threat. She had switched off her radar entirely, relying on the Mark 1 eyeball, the most reliable targeting system ever devised. Nightshade, talk to me, crackled Major Kastner's voice through the radio. Raven, I'm seeing something impossible. The primary aircraft appears to be shifting, like it's not entirely solid. Thalia's voice was tight with concentration. Whatever this thing is, it's not using conventional propulsion. No visible exhaust, no heat signature, but it's maintaining Mach 2.5 in level flight. Below her, the Mediterranean sparkled in the early morning sun. The beauty of the seascape contrasted sharply with the tension in the cockpit. Thalia had been in combat before, had faced MiGs over Afghanistan and survived surface-to-air missiles in Iraq. But this was different. This was encountering something that challenged everything she understood about physics and warfare. Nightshade, be advised that Falcon Squadron is reporting similar anomalies. Their targeting systems are completely compromised. Copy that, Raven. I'm going to attempt a close-pass identification run. What she was proposing was insane. A close-pass run against an unknown aircraft meant flying within visual range of a potentially hostile craft. At the speeds they were traveling, even a slight miscalculation could result in a mid-air collision. But it was the only way to get accurate intelligence about their enemy's capabilities. Thalia banked hard right, pulling 6GS as she adjusted her intercept course. The F-16 responded beautifully, its control surfaces biting into the thin air at 38,000 feet. She had always loved this moment, the precise instant when machine and pilot became one entity, when the boundaries between human reflexes and mechanical precision dissolved. "Tally-ho," she whispered, using the old fighter pilot's cry for visual contact. The enemy aircraft was visible now, roughly 2 miles ahead and slightly below her altitude. At first glance, it appeared to be a conventional fighter, sleek, angular with the predatory lines of a modern interceptor. But as she closed the distance, details became apparent that made her breath catch. The aircraft's skin seemed to ripple like water, constantly shifting between different configurations. What she had initially taken for standard control surfaces were actually morphing elements that changed shape in real time. The craft wasn't flying. It was flowing through the air, its entire structure adapting to aerodynamic conditions with fluid precision. Raven, you're not going to believe this. The target aircraft appears to be using some kind of metamaterial skin. It's actually changing shape as it flies. Nightshade, that's impossible. Nothing we know of has that capability. Ma'am, I'm looking at it right now. This thing is rewriting the rules of aerodynamics in real time. The implications were staggering. If the enemy possessed adaptive aircraft technology, Every advantage that American forces had counted on was suddenly obsolete. Stealth fighters, advanced missiles, even basic dogfighting tactics, all of it was based on the assumption that aircraft were rigid structures with predictable flight characteristics. Nightshade, maintain visual contact but do not engage. We need to document this. Copy that, Raven. But I'm reading energy buildup in the target. It's charging some kind of weapon system. Through her canopy, Thalia could see the enemy aircraft's surface beginning to glow with an eerie blue light. The luminescence started at the nose and spread backward along the fuselage, creating patterns that resembled circuit boards or neural networks. Whatever was happening, it was clearly a prelude to offensive action. Raven, the target is going hot. Recommend immediate evasive action for all aircraft. Nightshade, you are authorized to defend yourself, weapons free. The moment she had been dreading had arrived. Thalia reached for her weapon selector, cycling through her available ordnance. AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles for beyond visual range engagements, AIM-9 Sidewinders for close-range combat, and a 20 cannon for last resort situations. Against a conventional enemy, it was more than adequate firepower. But this wasn't a conventional enemy. The blue glow had intensified, and now she could see what appeared to be energy building at specific points along the aircraft's surface. It was like watching a weapon system charge up in a science fiction movie, except this was happening in real life, at 38,000 feet above the Mediterranean. Raven, I'm seeing what appears to be directed energy weapons. The target is preparing to engage. All aircraft, this is Raven Actual. You are cleared to engage with extreme prejudice. Repeat, weapons free on the unknown aircraft. Thalia's finger found the trigger for her AIM-120 missiles. The familiar weight of the weapon selector felt reassuring in her hand, a connection to decades of proven combat effectiveness. But as she prepared to fire, she realized that she was about to become part of history, the first American pilot to engage an enemy using technology that shouldn't exist. The blue glow suddenly flared, and the enemy aircraft seemed to fold in on itself, vanishing from sight for a moment before reappearing 300 meters to the left. The maneuver was impossible, defying every law of physics that Thalia understood. She was no longer just intercepting an unidentified aircraft. She was fighting the future. The AIM-120 AMRAAM streaked away from Thalia's F-16 with a brilliant flare, its solid-fuel motor accelerating the missile to Mach 4 in seconds. She watched through her HUD as the weapon tracked toward the enemy aircraft, its radar seeker locked onto the target's heat signature. For a moment, it seemed like a conventional engagement, pilot versus pilot, technology versus technology. Then the enemy aircraft did something that made her question her sanity. It simply stepped sideways. There was no other word for it. The craft didn't bank or roll or execute any recognizable maneuver. It maintained its forward vector while simultaneously translating 300 meters to the right, as if the normal rules of motion didn't apply. The missile, confused by the impossible movement, detonated harmlessly in empty air. Raven, this is Nightshade. My AMRAAM had a clean lock, but the target, it moved in ways that shouldn't be possible. Nightshade, repeat your last transmission. Ma'am, the enemy aircraft appears to have some kind of spatial displacement capability. It's not flying, it's teleporting. The radio silence that followed was deafening. Thalia could imagine the chaos in the Combat Information Center as career military officers tried to process what she was reporting. Teleportation was the stuff of science fiction, not modern warfare. But the evidence was right in front of her, captured on her aircraft's gun camera and transmitted back to base. Falcon Lead, this is Raven. What's your status? Raven, we're tracking multiple contacts now. Whatever this thing is, it's projecting at least 6 distinct radar signatures. My wingman fired 2 missiles at what appeared to be solid targets, but both detonated without effect. The enemy was toying with them, demonstrating capabilities that rendered conventional tactics useless. But why? If this aircraft possessed such advanced technology, why not simply eliminate the American fighters and proceed with whatever mission it was conducting? Nightshade, I want you to attempt communication with the target. Try all standard frequencies. Copy that, Raven. Unknown aircraft, unknown aircraft. This is United States Air Force Captain Vasquez. You are in violation of Turkish airspace. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came immediately, but not through radio. Instead, a voice spoke directly into Thalia's headset with perfect clarity and no static, as if the speaker were sitting in the cockpit beside her. Captain Vasquez, we have been monitoring your approach. Your flying is adequate. The voice was neither male nor female, carrying an artificial precision that suggested electronic generation. But there was something else in the tone, a note of curiosity, almost respect. Unknown aircraft, you are ordered to land immediately or be destroyed. Destroyed? By you? The voice carried what might have been amusement. Captain, your weapons are impressive by your standards, but they operate on principles we mastered millennia ago. However, your tactical thinking shows promise. Few pilots would have attempted a visual intercept against active jamming. Thalia's mind raced. The entity, she couldn't think of it as simply a pilot, was engaging in conversation, apparently eager to discuss military tactics. This wasn't the behavior of a hostile invader. It was more like a teacher evaluating a student's performance. What do you want? She asked. We want to understand. Your species has reached a crucial point in its development. You are beginning to explore beyond your planet to develop technologies that could either elevate you or destroy you. We are observers. Observers of what? Of your worthiness, your capacity for growth, your potential for joining the broader community of intelligent life. The words hit Thalia like a physical blow. She had spent her entire career preparing for conventional warfare, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. But if this entity was telling the truth, humanity was being evaluated by beings whose technology was so advanced that they could manipulate space and time itself. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you impressed us. Your decision to engage without authorization, to trust your instincts over your instruments, to adapt to an impossible situation, these are the qualities we look for. Leadership, courage, the ability to think beyond established parameters. Through her canopy, Thalia could see the enemy aircraft maintaining perfect formation beside her F-16. Up close, she could observe the constant rippling of its surface, the way it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was beautiful in an alien way, like watching liquid mercury flow through the shape of a fighter jet. What happens now? She asked. Now you must choose. We can demonstrate our capabilities in a way that will terrify your leaders, force them to surrender through fear. Or we can offer partnership, shared knowledge, elevation to a higher plane of existence. But the choice must be made by someone who understands both the potential and the consequences. Why me? Because you are the only one who has engaged us as an equal rather than a threat. Your colleagues are brave, but they think in terms of victory and defeat. You think in terms of understanding and adaptation. That is the difference between a warrior and a leader. The implications were staggering. If this entity was offering humanity a choice between conquest and partnership, the decision could determine the fate of the entire species. And somehow, through a series of circumstances that defied probability, that choice had fallen to Captain Thalia Vasquez, a pilot whose own commanders had considered her unfit for combat. What would partnership look like? She asked. Evolution, not just of your technology, but of your understanding. We would show you how to think in dimensions beyond your current perception, how to manipulate reality at the quantum level, how to travel between stars without the crude rockets you currently employ. And if we refuse, then you will continue on your current path. War, environmental destruction, the eventual collapse of your civilization. We will not interfere, but neither will we intervene when your species destroys itself. The radio crackled to life. Nightshade, this is Raven. Your telemetry indicates extended contact with the unknown aircraft. What's your status? Thalia realized that she was at the center of the most important decision in human history. Whatever she said next would determine whether humanity joined a galactic community or remained isolated until it destroyed itself. She keyed her radio. Raven, I need to speak with the highest authority available. We're not dealing with a military threat. We're dealing with a choice that will determine the future of our species. The blue glow around the enemy aircraft intensified, and Thalia realized that her answer would determine not just her own fate, but the fate of every human being on Earth. Major Kastner's hands trembled as she reached for the secure communication link to the Pentagon. In her 22 years of service, she had never encountered a situation that fell outside established protocols. But Captain Vasquez's report had just shattered every assumption about humanity's place in the universe. This is Raven Actual requesting immediate conference with DEFCON Alpha Authority. Priority level, Omega Black. The response came within seconds. Raven Actual, this is General Harrison. You have 30 seconds to justify an Omega Black alert. Sir, we have a situation that requires immediate attention from the highest levels of command. We are potentially dealing with non-human intelligence, possessing technology that renders our conventional military capabilities obsolete. The silence that followed lasted exactly 11 seconds. When General Harrison spoke again, his voice carried the weight of someone who had just been handed responsibility for the future of civilization. Raven, I'm authorizing Code Bravo protocols. All external communications are now classified at the highest levels. Brief me on the situation. Sir, Captain Vasquez has established communication with the entity piloting the unknown aircraft. It claims to be conducting an evaluation of human worthiness for inclusion in some kind of galactic community. The technology it has demonstrated includes spatial displacement, advanced jamming capabilities, and what appears to be matter manipulation at the quantum level. And Captain Vasquez's assessment. Sir, she believes the entity is offering humanity a choice between partnership and isolation, but the decision must be made by someone with the authority to speak for our species. Meanwhile, at 38,000 feet above the Mediterranean, Thalia maintained formation with the alien craft while wrestling with the implications of what she had learned. The entity, she had begun thinking of it as the observer, had remained silent for the past 3 minutes, apparently allowing her time to process the magnitude of the situation. Observer, she said finally, if I understand correctly, you're offering to share technology that could solve our energy crisis, end poverty, and allow us to explore the galaxy. Among other things, yes, but technology alone is not enough. We would also share wisdom, the accumulated knowledge of species that have successfully navigated the transition from planetary to galactic civilization. And the price? Growth. Your species would need to abandon its adolescent fascination with conflict and embrace cooperation. You would need to see yourselves not as separate nations or ideologies, but as a single species with a common destiny. The observer's words resonated with something deep in Thalia's psyche. She had spent her entire career serving her country, but she had always understood that the uniform she wore represented something larger than national boundaries. It represented the human desire to explore, to push boundaries, to reach for something greater than individual existence. How long do we have to decide? She asked. Time is a more flexible concept than your species currently understands, but in terms you would recognize, Your leaders have until the sun sets on this day. After that, we will withdraw our offer and allow humanity to continue its current trajectory. And if we accept, then you will join a community of beings who have learned to live in harmony with the universe itself. Your children will walk on worlds beyond your imagination, will understand the fundamental forces that govern reality, will become part of something infinitely larger than your current existence. The radio crackled. Nightshade, this is General Harrison. I'm being briefed on your situation. Can you provide confirmation that the entity you're communicating with possesses the technological capabilities you've described? Sir, I've witnessed spatial displacement that defies our understanding of physics, jamming technology that renders our most advanced systems useless, and structural adaptation that allows real-time modification of aerodynamic surfaces. Whatever this entity is, it's operating with technology that's centuries beyond our current capabilities. Captain, I need you to ask this entity to provide proof of its claims. If it truly represents a galactic community, we need verification. Thalia relayed the request to the observer, who responded with what might have been amusement. Proof. Very well. Watch your instruments, Captain. The F-16's HUD suddenly displayed a star map, not of Earth's solar system, but of the local galactic cluster. As Thalia watched in amazement, the display zoomed in on various star systems, each one marked with indicators showing the presence of intelligent life. The detail was staggering, not just the location of inhabited worlds, but information about their civilizations, their technologies, their histories. This is just a small sample, the observer explained. There are currently 47 species in your local galactic region that have achieved interstellar travel. 23 of them are members of what you might call the Galactic Council. The others have chosen isolation. And humanity. Humanity stands at the threshold. Your species has developed the basic requirements for membership: nuclear technology, space travel, global communication networks. But you have not yet learned to see beyond your tribal boundaries. The star map faded, replaced by images of Earth from space. But these weren't satellite photographs. They were real-time displays showing the planet from dozens of different angles simultaneously. The observer was demonstrating that it had access to surveillance technology that could monitor every aspect of human activity. We have been watching your species for what you would call several decades, the observer continued. We have seen your potential, your art, your music, your literature, your capacity for love and sacrifice. But we have also seen your tendency toward violence, your willingness to destroy your own environment for short-term gain. So what made you decide to make contact now? You did, Captain. Your decision to engage us without authorization, to trust your instincts over your instruments, to seek understanding rather than victory. These actions demonstrated that your species is capable of growth, that there are individuals among you who can think beyond the limitations of your current paradigm. The implications were staggering. Humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence had occurred not through carefully planned diplomatic channels, but through the split-second decision of a pilot who had been considered unfit for combat by her own commanders. General Harrison, are you monitoring this conversation? Thalia asked. Every word, Captain. And I have to say, this is the most important conversation in human history. I need you to ask the observer if it would be willing to communicate directly with our leadership. Already done, the observer replied, its voice now somehow audible to everyone on the communication channel. General Harrison, I have been monitoring your species' communication networks for some time. I am aware of your military capabilities, your political structures, your social dynamics. The question is not whether we are willing to communicate with your leaders, but whether your leaders are capable of understanding the magnitude of the choice they face. The radio fell silent as the implication sank in. Humanity was being offered the chance to join a galactic community, but only if they could demonstrate the wisdom to see beyond their current limitations. And somehow, the fate of the entire species had come down to a conversation between a fighter pilot and an alien entity 38,000 feet above the Mediterranean Sea. The sun was climbing toward its zenith, and with each passing minute, the deadline for humanity's decision grew closer. In a few hours, the choice would be made, one way or another. General Harrison's voice carried the weight of a man who had just realized that his military training had not prepared him for this moment. Observer, I need to understand the scope of what you're offering. Are you proposing to share technology that could revolutionize human civilization? General, we are proposing to share something far more valuable than technology. We are offering wisdom, the accumulated knowledge of species that have successfully navigated the transition from planetary to galactic civilization. Technology without wisdom is merely a more efficient means of destruction. In the Pentagon's Crisis Management Center, a dozen of the world's most powerful leaders watched the real-time feed from Thalia's aircraft. The president had been awakened at 5:47 a.m. The Secretary of Defense was en route via helicopter, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff were being briefed on a situation that had no precedent in human history. Observer, General Harrison continued, if humanity accepts your offer, what would be the immediate consequences? Change, profound, irreversible change. Your species would need to abandon its current political and economic systems, which are based on scarcity and competition. You would need to embrace abundance and cooperation. This is not a transition that can be accomplished overnight. And if we refuse, then you will continue on your current path. We will not interfere, but neither will we intervene when your species encounters challenges that require galactic-level solutions. There are forces in the universe that care nothing for your individual survival, cosmic events, hostile species, existential threats that can only be addressed through collective action. Thalia found herself at the center of a conversation that would determine the fate of every human being on Earth. The observer's aircraft continued to maintain perfect formation beside her F-16, its morphing surface reflecting the morning sun in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Observer, you mentioned that 23 species are members of the Galactic Council. What happened to the others? Some chose isolation and eventual extinction. Others attempted to join the community but failed to make the necessary psychological adjustments. A few became aggressive and had to be contained. The word contained carried ominous implications. If humanity rejected the observer's offer and continued on its current path of conflict and environmental destruction, would they eventually be seen as a threat to galactic stability? Captain Vasquez, the observer said, its voice now carrying a note of urgency, I need you to understand something. The choice your species faces is not unique. Every intelligent species reaches this crossroads. The decision you make will determine not just your immediate future but your evolutionary destiny. Choose wisely. The radio crackled with a new voice. This is the President of the United States. Observer, I'm speaking for the human species when I say that we need more time to consider your offer. This is the most important decision in our history. Mr. President, time is a luxury that your species may not have. There are other forces at work in the galaxy, forces that view emerging species as either potential allies or potential threats. If you do not choose your path, it may be chosen for you. The implications were clear. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and not all of the other species were as benevolent as the observer. If they rejected the offer of partnership, they might find themselves facing enemies they couldn't even comprehend. What do you recommend? The president asked. I recommend that you listen to Captain Vasquez. She has demonstrated the qualities that we look for in a species ready for galactic citizenship. Trust her judgment. All eyes turned to Thalia, who realized that she had become the most important person in human history. The fate of 7 billion people now rested on her ability to make the right choice. "Observer," she said, "if we accept your offer, what would be the first step? You would need to select representatives, individuals who can think beyond your current paradigm, who can serve as bridges between your species and the galactic community. These ambassadors would come with us to learn the ways of galactic civilization, then return to guide your species through the transition. And if we refuse, then we depart, and you never see us again. Your species continues on its current path, facing whatever challenges the universe presents without our guidance or protection." The weight of the decision was crushing. Accept the offer, and humanity would embark on a journey that would fundamentally change everything they understood about existence. Refuse, and they would remain alone in a universe that might be far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. "Mr. President," Thalia said, "I recommend that we accept the Observer's offer. The potential benefits far outweigh the risks." The silence that followed lasted exactly 13 seconds. When the president spoke again, his voice carried the weight of history. "Observer, on behalf of the human species, I accept your offer of partnership. But I have one condition. I want Captain Vasquez to be one of our ambassadors. She has proven herself capable of thinking beyond conventional limitations." "Agreed, Mr. President. Captain Vasquez will be an excellent representative of your species." As the words were spoken, Thalia felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She had become humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy, a role she had never imagined and never trained for. But somehow, it felt right. Her entire life had been preparing her for this moment. The Observer's aircraft began to glow with that familiar blue light, and Thalia realized that her journey was about to begin. The future of humanity had just been decided, and she would be among the first to explore what lay beyond the stars. The transformation began immediately. As the Observer's aircraft intensified its blue glow, Thalia felt her F-16 being enveloped in the same energy field. Her instruments didn't register any change. Temperature, pressure, and oxygen levels remained constant, but she could sense something fundamental shifting in the fabric of reality around her. "Captain Vasquez," the Observer's voice now carried warmth that hadn't been present before, "you are about to experience something that no human has ever encountered. Do not be afraid. We will ensure your safety." "Observer, what's happening to my aircraft?" "We are creating a translation field, a bubble of transformed space that will allow your primitive craft to survive the journey ahead. Think of it as a protective cocoon that will enable you to witness technologies and environments that would otherwise be lethal too."